It's all good. If it is what is expertise, American civil service is on the brink of loss of bargaining rights. Remove this is the most important line of defense against unfair treatment and partisan retaliation. And 25 civil service setting us for and SNA to CDCHS, but leaving people in fire to like protection more than agreement voting units of mass representative floor. Interest of trumping and pursuing against state adjudicate unfair treatment and rights and concern mismanagement. Expecting retail stripping employee union rights easier to send approaches anyone when those exposed mismanagement. Terminating bargaining rights harms the civil services tension for experts and their willingness for candor. Handle to 25 terms straight. NCB for most of the workforce recruit people in civil service CB for zone of pushback and preserve. The ability to carry out a mission worker stability protection. The working government both centers protection political commercial union contract report. The field for review future rights of flag safety concern about favor attribution under Trump. Insulating experts from mass purges and the threat of political pressure is key or else self-censorship and loyalist replacements lead to crisis metastasis. And then 22 civil servants and security oriented agencies because a providing country somewhere obvious nuclear tech market making a reliable city manager who can provide security while their job protection became possible to her exceptionally protecting and then give foundations to offer make a tough to cure executing policies high state report misconduct the confidence integrity protected shifting would show experts thinking cautious advice of servants being fired for unwelcome and advice and talent cut across pressure to Iran Chinese representative civil servant because work for expertise in which would not qualify alliances are viable because civil servant and then because the system realizes who have office who's able to make high risk venture nuclear security reflect clean up your city and then more because civil servants give advice based on data and integrity deterioration the bureaucratic expertise unleashes catastrophic risk nuclear war financial crisis disease cyber and disasters Carbon 25 the USFT maintenance before the risk fire nuclear doomsday avian food interest rates suffer through federal bureaucracy agents and negative prefer the financial crisis is a cyber calamity those who can reopen to make civil servants with specific expertise limits the damage Trump committed to dismantling the bureaucracy capacity handle the next crisis pandemics only with the one swat the risk of war across the globe common disaster man more common Trump's action make it far most likely exposing country this is the previous seem arcane its agency got over the such make disaster more likely government far less likely capable of handling it diseases existential knock-on effects circumvent defense 23 travel and urban is a opportunity pathogen early pathogen only kills small person due to historical evidence consistent with hyperpolitical extinction pandemic for the civilization collapse history for speed very deep energy temperature rapidly rise cessation part of nutrition result in double catastrophe compound initial catastrophic burst the shifts in climate cyber attacks create overblown backlash that forces retaliation even if the intent is de-escalation Chandler then 23 cyber wrecks haven't even now exposed to damage and illicit demands on military retail even I did not know crabs for leader chance and de-escalation cyber kind of extreme the pressure for retail overwhelming enthusiasm real considerable pressure officials approved force pressure leads to authorized attacks as de-escalatory that cycle snowballs into nuclear war and then 23 cyber attacks portend danger to peace attack infrastructure can snowball to mutual attack on weapons system control the fusion could escalate nuclear and the civilization spill over follow nuclear bomb care the threat to other countries prolonged economic decline ignites global hotspots which are then 24 downturn risk interstate conflict rapid less predictable inflation high interest escalation stability then growth escalation Ukraine is no time for new hostility amplifying fragility people the power steps into vacuum shifting eco fragility surge flashpoints space contagion leading to rapidly expanded crisis major have best potential destabilization driving pressure escalate directly while nukes hot later prevailing inflation tight labor response spending U.S. new shock the unmanageable consolidation U.S. global market industry denied debt governors unable to help cushion impact to sharpening downturns collapse of disaster preparedness is existential mega disasters Casey Schmeiglich and 24 mega disasters strike a catastrophic blow on widespread the slow burn nuclear droughts crop famines and collapse emergency manager have full known disaster numbers can guard resources siloed organization help respond the recovery management should have lost bureaucracy wider manager wide into transition from preparedness to resilience civil service employment uncertainty because Russia and China and opening for espionage. Walton and 25 dismissed workers are prime target for foreign until grievances money motivating espionage database fight instigator money exploited by Russian civil service and not here causes to have an idea what imagine worker for preying on grievances among the civil service federal workers feeling uncertainty about their job look elsewhere to keep family insolvents espionage leads to nuclear war acted in 20 espionage mistakes for an attack malware IT accident spread a nuclear system collecting until increase first attack espionage overview weapons enable preemptive strike and remove a PALS or P-leading over use the fuel commander order use that collect until lead to save your attack on his nukes were imminent espionage lead misperception attack operation workers are watching the misinterpreted prelude to nuclear use by Russia China or Russia renewing bargaining as key to alliance credibility sure and then 25 admin fragility becomes strategy risk capacity credibility independent that agency can manufacture alliances had a bureaucratic passive court instrument power agency for leverage collective bargaining stabilize retention strength accountability for partisan inference reinforce democratic credibility allies and adversaries judge strength by capacity government capacity renew legitimacy alliance credibility solves war breakdown causes it brands and 25 failure of deterrence collapses respect order based on democratic value of respect problem religion power China Russia Iran no go order slippery Pentagon vexing problem China stretching resource risk interlocking Beijing rehearsing Taiwan US China would cause nuclear escalation alliance structure alliance strengthen democratic world absent a predictable and comfortable workplace environment grounded in union-based protections for merit expertise will forever collapse Keller and 24 Power state implementing could make decision for policy program to respond and offer for authorities. Working that very hard to for continuous public policy to ground authority. And the shape policy now Congress president address every problem here is executive policy or company NRC radar. But your SEC regular security radar work FDA insurance safety SEC public health. All federal agencies were working to problem political control. Bureaucracy reduction of regulatory burden driven expert federal implementing here. The expertise likely to voice of views opinions or surpass within determination student. Controlling federal based on commitment examination factor limitation removal. And the point whoever less incentive for removing perfect reason unit for stronger after marriage. And then opposed change the threat merit system grievance challenge personal management. And the structure directed secure promote and competence of the law, marriage to law, unless consensus of loyalty to the government authority, Congress, mayor, and nation promote and minister expertise for effective government and power and capacity are risk. The plan alone repairs the civil service's independence, and then confidence in protection and litigation and lobbying address all causes handler, and then 24 rights as restrained on prosperity, people, civil service, independent opportunity, discretionary judgment, work leave rights, and full restraint to be, restrict employment rules, union power, working over counter behavior, against press tool, many press use of structure, civil servant, and discipline, resource quotas, undermine morale, obstruct burdens of working condition, resign, and establish demolition, counting funding, union labor contract, prevent deterioration, working condition, labor, condition ability, lead, criticize public, speaking public, authority, association, should abuse labor, it's key guarantee ability to speak public through their testimony in your official speech, even though playing cannot have working to protect your rights of person, your objective, higher winning, represented employer, and find individual clerk that litigation, losing delayed during a budget, and subsidize agents who co-op their profits and account, union lobby as one of the only prefiguration group that enforcement funding and assumption influence, and then Congress, restoring CBR enables policy autonomy, and then scientific integrity, joining 25 federal lady who work with wrong being restore CBR union, fully better train union investing expertise, including voice of protection law, compromise standards and work facts, EPA staff, secure scientific restriction, whistleblower protection, FEMA, and negation right to refuse unlawful orders. The damage is severe but not irreversible. Most experts are sticking it out but avoiding competition. Schumacher 25 Trump, go to this military state long way fast majority sticking out keeping the heritage dangerous fast majority. Even though getting a job elsewhere, job market limited BLS over the job market 100,000 per picture. Of employer market then thought employees of 2.2 million civil servant year and then combined 12 protected. Thus the plan, the United States federal government should substantially strengthen collective bargaining rights by restoring collective bargaining rights before the federal government workers. Advantage 2 is overreach. Trump's assault on the civil service paved the way for broad executive aggrandizement and authoritarian family warhead. And then 25, the mass mobilization during period of civil service operation explosive rely on judiciary executive power. And the strategic case of intimidate agencies, IG, whether due process cancel CBA's elimination, we different institute practice that shape American government for forces to loyal to hard rivers, attraction illegal behavior, implicated bond public personnel, including the balance of power. It's part of a broad test to see how far Trump can go, halting power grabs before it's normalized by precedent is key to real and executive crusades. 20, and then 20, Trump firing official by list civil service protection bureaucracy, and the difference of federal protection cannot decide of worse. The case of one national case to accept precedent statistics our boundary executive power as the court overrule presidential government was the largest or chief largest control by unit executive room, and official politically out of control executive financial official executive friendly, and once court eliminated ability to fire and rubber pushback out crunchability crunching, and go all the way down plus the Trump more independent agencies. That's the most potent tool. And then a rogue executive's arsenal is manipulation of employee rights and constraining bargaining power. And then 24 recent focus on unitary executives latest second is regular limit rate to reduce time control, asset property control, reducing federal employee right, and continue to use and remove Trump to stimulate SPP working union, and make easier to fire federal worker union right to recontinue controlling employees like political, and the policies enforceable collective bargaining rights enshrines worker input, and then regulatory decisions stymie recognizement shirk in 25 CBS, whereas agency fire hire cannot be consistent to high for worker negotiations and never affected decisions so high refiring infringement may take, and the president over regulation prohibits workforce regulation comment, executive powers continue legal and effective president, and the changing working conditions for long restriction press power only estimated Trump large impact operation structural deregulation privatization making RFA to apply has to be by contract resistance by federal workforce, and this is the best and only option. Protections create electoral costs that dissuade power grabs, quelling populist appeal, backstopping authoritarianism, and outpacing stagnant judicial charge. Blanket 25 Trump really recommend the guys for the insufficient federal work, main obstacle for American fiscal authority role strong hardly for Libya's is well positioned how reaction ambition should be stuck to push against the record. Usually the major rich and operation taking store American people the country to guard story. The markets I had to convince you on you are convinced that terrorists are federal play. Every also have to run single liberation the less scared to speak up publicly to think administration always. The two people when you're surely measuring a push right against self first only man resistance encourage deeper power. That goes nuclear Jackson. And 20 feet relationship and technology nuclear war military gentlemen have a cold offensive mindset like to miscommunication with American CNC. In terms of escalation reaction military policy activated bureaucracy nuclear change one entry ethno nationalism response to dehumanization favor. No nuclear violence predicted as people was likely violent nuclear treaty case for governance spills over. Unchecked Trump is a polycrisis accelerant producing feedback loops to nuclear war. And extinction. Homer Dixon and 24 Trump. The politicians are here responsible loyalists to clear away program radical and organization reducing concealed Trump loyalists. And Spur accepted his experience of weaken the Fed's ability to carry function DOG pursuit change OpenGC voting machine. Checks and balance and Trump leverage unjustified crackdown create a state of extension of bullying. Far right populists also like Bolsonaro blanket terrorists and who's relationship. And wage price power jeopardizing investor confidence. And the party to millions of migrants raise inflation. Trump and Romania ambiguous support critic the environment. The line to Putin and aggression Chinese support. Trump makes Russia to something nuclear Trump issue leadership or lose coordination disability American party public nuclear since come down to president judgment quality advice under pressure to facilitate the system disruptor. A uniquely different effect, issuing leadership also together version along authority and election out of America. Democratic model promise policies rescinding a strictly committed protection measure triggers system crisis.
Excuse me.
Okay, are you good?
Yeah.
Okay. The Hello evidence about a predictable and comfortable workplace environment is about merit protections. What about merit resolves all the merit protections resolves the uncertainty about federal workers thinking that maybe they won't be effectively or accurately evaluated for their merit, or just that they might be fired in the future?
Well, so there are parts of the government that just do adjudicate the processes of bargaining and whether like a worker should or should not be hired. Like that's just the way that bargaining and firing protections work. And the other thing is that we get to durably fiat that those bargaining protections are enforced. And
Wait,
so
hold on. You don't get to durably fiat that bargaining contract successfully win merit protections. That's not a right to the bargaining
Well, I
process.
don't-
Are you saying the plan fiat's the outcome of the bargaining contract?
Well, no, but we get to fiat good faith bargaining. Like this question is akin to like why would corporations or the
Okay,
government ever
I'm
sue
more
to a
asking
worker?
about
Like,
what about the merit process, which this COLA evidence is about, solves your arguments about
well, you can
uncertainty
obviously,
and
well,
predictability.
so workers know that they can still be fired if they're bad at their jobs, which is based on merit, but they can't get fired for like things that are external to merit, such as discrimination or, just like willy-nilly like Trumpian firings, etc.
Okay, and then what's the internal link to checking this? So your impact on Advantage 2 is like Trump will be extremist, he will want to launch military offensives and nuclear war. How does federal worker collective bargaining check that?
Well, so there's a distinction between 1 and 2. For Advantage 2, it's more of a precedent-based advantage. Moyen and Schweitner say that worker protections are sort of the litmus case for the UET. And so restraining them sort of sets a precedent that Trump can't do everything. And our evidence actually
Okay,
says
so
that he'll do Trump 1.0
and then
on a
let me
larger
just
scale.
ask about what that precedent looks like. What normal means just be like the court rules that UET is invalid, so no collective bargaining rights, or
Do we want to say
sorry, what's the question?
is it court precedent to say UET won't be violated?
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay.
What?
Yes, the answer to her question.
Okay, so the normal means is the court's about UT. Okay, got it. And then alliance credibility. Trump obviously has done tons of unpredictable things. Tariffs, Venezuela, just like demanding that NATO pay more for the defense budget. What makes you think that cred is
So
recoverable?
Schleusner sort of answers that and says that the interaction between our alliances and the day-to-day diplomacy is actually by workers. It name drops collective bargaining and says that the retention of workers means that our allies and adversaries know that what we say is credible or not credible.
Okay, so then let's say that Trump is like, I would like you to pay way more for your defense commitments to NATO, and I'm also going to enact tariffs. And then experts or just workers ensure that that's credible. That still seems pretty bad because that's not what allies want. So how do
the
workers
civil
check?
service is like 95% of government functions. Even if Trump says something, we have diplomats in between every ally. That's like
Okay,
you'll
so
probably have
your,
to pay a
your
little
internal
less.
link is like diplomats go rogue and they say the opposite of what Trump is
No,
doing.
it's that those
which is
diplomats, it's
tariffs
that those
and
civil service
draft
workers don't
alliances.
exist. It's not that they go rogue. The civil service workers don't exist now, so that diplomatic interaction and the credibility of what we
But
say.
how do they
goes up.
change
The
what
point
Trump
is
is
that they
proposing
also
to
can
alliances?
clarify the intent of those policies and explain what Trump is doing as
We'll
shoring up
explain
and
that tariffs
strengthening
are meant
alliances.
to restrict free trade. Like that doesn't seem to help a lot, but.
Oh, let me see what it says. It's 6 off. The first advantage. 6 off, first advantage, second advantage. Michigan, are you both good? Cool. You good?
What's up?
My word is having issues, but now it's good.
The federalism dissent. Progressive federalism is mounting under Trump now, solves the act, but state capacity is key. Jordan 22, political interest drive federalism onward. Blue states seek autonomy for climate and healthcare. Rare consensus suggests restructuring federalism, demand innovation, intelligent policy. States must overhaul operation and maintain services. States will have the full capacity as the federal government sets maximum safety and future positive development depends on state policymakers. The plan prevents states from capturing fired federal workers. That's key to capacitate states. As a Democratic counterweight, Mintzberg 25 states the opportunity to counterweight Trump states. Recruit federal workers, fast tracking job applications, state critical vacancies, mail and announced research and 18 health federal workers, including CDC, FDA, NIH, effort has political options and deadly the chart. Fast track the process we had at 1239 applications about bringing the government for the rich. Progressive federalism solves climate change. Madonna and Tyson 18. Progressive federalism environmental policy led nation California auto emissions. A dozen states adopted to fight for opposition for the industry. 12 states sued the EPA, including JG 70 danger public welfare states to define the president of California foreign policy held under 2 coalition procedure protecting emission more than 1 billion without many 30% implemented climate action plans. They create public government that bypass coalition market called the bulk of the Pacific Dry climate action aggregate is made by the states. And climate change causes extinction through cascading complex system failure. Mitigation is key. Adaptation causes existential termination shock. Richard et al. 24 emission drive 1.3% likely to be accelerated. Burning over 80% climate change with an external risk climate undermine ag disruption, usually economic, social, political, instability, migration, conflict, and global understanding of worsening scenarios as underdevelopment, increased vulnerability, interconnected landscape, synchronous, cascading coast create potential for less rapidly spreading onto global swells, climate change, existential, misguided climate change, not a single uniform process, diffuse impact, activating different risk cascades, interact with other threats, food security, societal health, volcanic eruptions, do not impact the issue, reinforcing global death spirals, other answer direct impacts made earth uninhabited, entirely different course in the catastrophic warming underrepresented, and analysis are harder climates are on the side of the job possible campaign outside of created about for conservative science and both consistent emergency responses as the eye countries for the problems termination of colony deactivate civil significant accelerate warming, the advantage counterplan. The United States federal government should establish the following civil service protections. 1. Establish ironclad prohibitions on reassigning, coercing, defunding, or dismissing federal workers for political reasons. 2. Establish anti-discrimination and whistleblower protections, including banning retaliation and providing legal and financial support for disclosures. 3. Streamline hiring, firing, and promotion for federal workers based on the merit and offer to reinstate terminated high-performing and high-value workers. 4. Offer world-class merit-based pay, benefits, and job security. 5. Reverse and prohibit Trump's administrative budget cuts and deregulatory efforts. 6. Reaffirm Humphrey's executor. 7. Via congressional foreign policy oversight committees, enact organizational reforms to address overlapping missions and obsolete pragmatic constraints, briefing Congress routinely on covert actions, and soliciting recommendations for improvement with immediate executive compliance. 8. And adopt scientific integrity policy across all federal agencies enforced by an independent investigation and review board empowered to issue financial and injunctive remedies. The United States should impeach and remove President Donald J. Trump for the high crime of violating the separation of powers through bad faith, unlawful civil service terminations, and dedicate an inspector general office to internally investigating claims of secret state privilege abuse. Planks 1 through 4 solved. The thesis of the counterplan is that they have read a 180 that says we need a particular employment law outcome for workers, but have no defense of the CBR process to achieve that. The counterplan solves by fiating those directly without avoiding the extra steps. That also solves the deference that benefit by avoiding judicial review. Alignment 25. Agencies assault from officer from the DH legal fire debates more than reflective order always there. Rebuilding civil service unitary, but she also is not enough. Under outdated framework for decades, lawyer upon their legislation scattered upon statutes, create a labyrinth of obstacles. 120 hiring authority, 28 pay system, fracture training, and HR hiring disclosure to miracle done process. Scaffolding having conflict protective performance be led by those who know the system. Create COs employment, 100 hiring officials, unit leaders, and experts in the federal HR, IT, and independent panel put forward years. Proposal strengthen the law. Plank 5 reverses budget cuts and deregulation, which solves Trump's policy agenda. Plank 6 reaffirms Humphrey's executor, which is a core case ensuring agency independence from presidential coercion. Plank 7 solves any reason why executive flexibility is bad by establishing congressional oversight committees. Plank 8 adopts a scientific integrity policy across all agencies, which solves their expertise key argument. And the last plank ensures checks on the executive by impeaching Trump, which removes those proximate cause of polity crisis and eliminates abuses of exec power through DOJ oversight. The capacity descent. Strong bureaucracy does not check Trump. Gutting the bureaucracy does by destroying capacity for reactionary policy making. Handler 25. Employer excludes political appointees who make a managerial core protection no reach workers that foreign policies they cover frontline workers, robust protection for president's managing rights to determine agencies, mission, budget, number of employees, and security bargaining limit the ability to micromanage overreaches but allow presidents to recruit workers below pay removing his powers to deliver campaign promises, labor rights, represent expanding capacity, control capacity, change documented. Presidents prefer bargaining rights, offer executive more valuable power, sizing politically pose difficulties to control regards to foreign power, oversight, breakdown rights, expand president's ability to deliver, and competent Trump locks in MAGA power and policy for a generation. Bauer 829. Trump cannot govern without bureaucratic building paradigms, something requires using rather than denoting bureaucracy's major policy change, makes employees support the policy and directives, populist realignment requiring bureaucratic leverage, knowledge, and supply chain, global balance, make in-depth knowledge, and report the nation of geopolitical variables, but bomb, destroy, facilities, technical questions, cancel, distracting foreign policy, reset, generate intense opposition, split the coalitionary so far, order to have assets, because they located after don't do the dot the i's for policy, ambition to only bureaucracy, and the deference to said. Plan breaks a trend of core deference to the executive on national security issues. Handler 25. The president had wide discretion to exclude the unions on national security grounds. Court held that the president could not be required to find facts entitled to presumption of regularity review with deferential parties. Grown states in federal court neither want to wait unions face a top battle given discretion afforded to the president with national security. Deference is key to protect sensitive military info from excessive discovery. Kroner 22. Bad facts produce bad laws. SSP protects against national security form of disclosure that disruptive melodic intel relations with the ally preserving at SSP. So Supreme Court observed the utmost deference would be intolerable the courts of view info. Held secrets that privilege is absolute. Specifically, it threatened the state secrets privilege which safeguards foreign intelligence gathering. Now, how 22 F5 fights that does not trump that SSP F5 does not mention the privilege to strong. I have the question of whether disclosure harm national security. Foreign intel gathering mitigates the convergence of existential risk. S4 23 interstate tensions, existential friendly to extinction runway AI pandemic nuclear war game seal uncertainty identifying risk provide results to shocks. Intel help decide and understand and warn existential intel probabilities nuclear warfare protectors to the job disrupting crowd growth and causing extinction. Intel help navigate events of cloned downside final chances risk nullity emerging text based on trust in connection with WD less fully rising AI systems accidental issues by states and unscalable escalation integrate to nuclear destabilize stability. Intel can support innovative approaches. The expertise advantage. 1. Circumvention. Trump FLRA makes CBR meaningless. AFGE 112 Senate confirmed irrigation represents democratic hostility towards CBR repeated bad faith bargaining representation. Dismissing the increasing grievances area where weaken union membership restrictions time to make it easier to discipline weakening whistleblowers safeguard tolling reporting FLRA has the majority. Trump appointees 2. Zero leverage because federal workers can't strike. 3. Trump does not listen to experts when they don't agree with him. Kelly 25. Trump cancels countries to develop vaccines to recognize nothing new about health. Econ or EAD companies depend on discharge expertise to Kennedy. These birds, the HSS say that experts manipulate the truth. Answers are manufactured by nations that we're not going to help stop them and listen to experts. Can you assume bad intent expert only outside of the expertise? Clearly, 4. True loyalism is impossible. Matablix and Madagar 25. Relationship that Trump has built a fragmented, unable to achieve systematic, extensive, dependent, autonomous, aggregate, outreach, American democracy remains a game of multiple layers, dumps, and organized from major must type oligarchs with conflicted Trump to Trump to support lose enthusiasm when absorb the economic effects of tariffs or disruption of services. 5. Doge cuts are an alt cause that's external from the CBR. 1 AC social linear 1029. Nora is the yellow highlighting.
Read the gray.
Re-highlighting Trump's February executive order on domestic government efficiency imposed rapid staffing cuts and structural administrative weakness. 1AC solution there. 1029 targeted funding, iterative updates and transformative performance metric can restore the trust policy stabilize NCT compress and limited advancement German talent to the private sector balance between in-house expertise and extractive labor must change president with the whole for that Congress is appropriate. 6 U.S. foreign policy is irrecoverable. Malik 25 foreign policy is carried away diminished patriotic policy but Ukraine terrorists and allies situation quickly changes policy must her allies trust and make deterrent close credible change from intervention to isolation to lack of stable institutional frames new administration invest in allies and keep out allies like also European governments are increasing strategic autonomy so in the full information relations with China, Israel, and Saudi Arabia pursuing international partnerships, confidence, rooted credibility, hard to restore. 6 no deterrent breakdown. Earth 24, the third world war between U.S. and China, Russia, and Israel. Iran is unlikely relying proxy info, political and economic warfare, avoiding West economic use between China, Russia, and Iran. Exhibit equally severe signs China is supporting as econ accelerating corruption, persist, restricting movement, econ Russia and Iran deeply unpopular and waves of protest, escalation looks likely strong incentive on the chief of missing casualties, ensure Democrats, domestic security, and reduce discontent. 7 is that there's no disease impact for MERS 25 infection would only be from extinction to effect from limited heterogeneity, genetic changes confirm resistant humanity, for example, viral receptors, population trace that find the disease and receive a non-lethal dose, even how lethal sufficient humans survive lethal prejudice with hosts, limiting transmission at less violence, have more chances of spreading even the rest of global diffusion, not sufficient mystery. Every community on Earth unconscious tribe, many regions remain isolated humans would survive it. And 8, economic decline doesn't cause war. Well, 20, if difference were caused, there would be more use and 4, 70, 20 wars unrelated to econ. 2nd, no matter economic conditions, not war unless they think that they can quickly achieve with reasonable success. Depression are the only factor, many more significant. The overreach advantage. 1. Trump foreign policy does not cause conflict. Firstman 25, transnational and personal relations to public go foco. Trump sees the Lopez pay off the ability to bring together Qatar, Turkey, East and Israel, U.S. and conflict, avoiding challenge further compression or NATO or ensuring countries that spend the Gaza deal emblematic trade poses an incentive for long-term peace. White House apply this model to Ukraine, other conflicts, Russia, China, and other success in the Middle East. Washington will find credibility increasing in other areas. 2. Systemic buffers contain the poly crisis. Smith 22, it's easy to think that air chock full of risk because of the ability to heuristic or model getting worse, getting better when multiply fails, velocity demand cushion short-term. Prices when base central makes the inflation never instruction buffer mechanism push back against problem conditions. The one really disaster includes led to needed infrastructure spending. Obamacare and industrial policy. Chinese economy has slowed down. Is believing the impact of the Ukraine war on Europe's economy. Also reduce attention to use China cover Ukraine incentive for the rapid deployment of renewable energy to supply content. Also slow rate the external elections per humans get serious. 3. Union protests and suits are lukewarm and ineffective. Brenna Chu 25. Union trust the court lukewarm tend to overturn by the Supreme Court. Delay of action 1. The demonstration will be effective rather than mounting a militant struggle. AFL CIO would be strongly awarded letter membership on the client. AFTEs only want the small protest informational pickets. 4. Civil service diplomats are sent to increasingly marginal posts compared to political appointees. Sure and spook generates 15. Political appointees control over the use foreign policy. The of the career diplomat authority is the career after this have chief of mission authority in less than 20% of the world GDP influence and multilateral ambassadors are full of political appointees such as NATO, the UN, EU, and the OSC. The trend of the appointees may be on the road. The choice of who has an impact on our quality of policy reliance on appointees are turning the country to the pre-Pendleton. Yeah.
Okay, that probably makes sense.
Okay. 16, status.
It's conditional.
Can you
Hang on, I'm sorry, I'm way behind here. Can we start at 3 now?
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Status.
Dispositional.
Can you kick planks?
Nor
All the planks are dispositional.
all the planks are dispositional.
Okay. I want to start on the spillover DA. So you read a card that's like the courts are are deferring to Trump now, and then I'm guessing you're going to use advantage 2 as the link evidence. And then you read a separate card about a different court doctrine that's like the courts are deferring in the context of like state secrets. And this is about whether the state has to publish intel reports, like top secret and secret classified reports. Why do you think that would change after the
So a couple components. The first is that you agreed in cross-ex that normal means of the plan is through the existing court case, which is disputing whether or not Trump is able to fire the federal workers. I think Nora has something to add also about.
Well, no, okay.
Yeah, just like the reason why CBR was first abolished
sorry,
is because Trump was able to justify based on the national security
that makes sense.
exemption
Wait.
that
I
CBR
have a
is a
separate
national
question.
security issue.
Yeah.
So
Any
the way
instance of
the
court
national
bring
security
down is the
regime
court
works,
questioning national
Nora, I have a separate
security.
question. The way the national security regime works is that there's intelligence that's classified based on secret, top secret, etc. Your evidence is just like we need to classify that intelligence so our adversaries don't know about it. If that's
Yes,
true, why would our
you've read an
wait, no,
uniqueness,
why?
like you've
Yes.
restated
No,
our
okay,
uniqueness that
wait,
it is
I'm
the
gonna ask you a
extent
question.
to
Wait,
which
I beg. Okay, why would our intelligence gathering scheme change? Like, why does classification go out the window after the plan?
So it's less. So the degree to which evidence is or is not classified, it depends on what the United States law is regarding whether or not that should be classified.
Okay, I'll give an example. Let's say there's a top secret, thing that only like 20 people know in the government that we know where China's nukes
Right.
are in some way.
Our evidence
Why
is
would
very
we-
specific to
wait,
the
okay,
way that
wait,
these
you
court
have to let
cases
me
would
ask the
play out.
question. Okay, let's say we have a question that's like, we have intel that's like, we know where Chinese nukes are. after the plan, why would that mean we have to publish to everyone
Right,
where we
so-
know where they are?
Like I was explaining, the internal link to this dissent is about disclosure through court cases. So for example, when someone were to be suing the government over something that they did regarding military policy,
Why would
the
anyone
court,
sue for where
why would
Chinese
anyone
nukes
sue
are?
over what the military
where
does?
Chinese nukes are. Like, your evidence
What?
is like top secret
Right,
intelligence.
right. So like,
would
for
become
example,
public.
if the military needed to justify its decision based on its data about Chinese nukes, then it would have to describe that through the disclosure process.
Okay. I guess that makes sense. The Sapasor core evidence is about like intelligence about threats like climate and AI, and like literally like human intelligence about those threats. Why does classification and national security matter for AI and climate?
Right, so the how evidence, which was the internal link to that, says that the question is whether that disclosure is available to the general public. If the general public has information about where Chinese nukes are or which types of AI they'd be able to use, that seems pretty bad for national security.
I'm asking a separate question. Your intel evidence is about having the knowledge to deal with climate and AI. That's like the literal like knowledge that exists.
Yeah,
Why
so part of this is also about how adversaries would respond. So the Cessaport evidence says that emerging technology, like if they knew that we had that information, that would result in
We're
additional.
gonna keep on using all use. I wanna ask about the counter plan. So the counter plan, you have a plan, quote, offer world-class merit-based pay. What is world-class?
I mean,
It would be
they,
competitive with the private sector.
Okay, and then you establish ironclad prohibitions. Ironclad?
they would,
Durable, strongly enforced.
Okay, and then what is the incentive to be rehired?
the like from the workers' perspective,
Yeah.
you mean? Well, the workers want their jobs back. They lost them. They're now unemployed.
Okay,
They would, like,
and then lastly,
back.
the one you read a host of evidence that the workers having a voice is key, you know, being able to speak their mind through the bargaining process because every worker and union is different. How do you think the counterplan solves a voice?
Well, so first of all, I don't think you have a terminal impact to worker
Well, we
voice
have a
because
lot,
all of
actually.
so all of your impacts though are about worker expertise and whether they would be
Okay,
participating.
are you gonna fix it or not?
No, the counterplan our argument is that bargaining is not key to voice because agencies have internal communication mechanisms, like obviously people
Okay.
communicate in the workplace without having to go through adversarial
Okay,
contract.
plank 7,
Yeah.
congressional oversight, this seems like the SQO. What do you think is different between, you know, the executive having to tell Congress that they're gonna do something
Well,
and the
so
counterplan?
importantly, Plank 7 specifies what that agency would do in the world of the counterplan. So it says that they would enact new organizational reforms to prevent missions that are overlapping or are counter to like national security.
Okay, 1131.
Okay, I'm sending it. Okay, sorry, my computer's working kind of slowly. Okay, it was sent.
Wait, Dartmouth 1131, just to make sure you skipped LP and privatization.
Are we saying we're ready?
Yeah, we're
11:27.
taking vote
Okay,
again.
I stopped.
What?
11:27. I stopped it. I used 4 seconds.
Okay, it was sent. While everyone's receiving it, the order is expertise, which is advantage 1, overreach, which is advantage 2, the counter plan, the federalism DA, the capacity DA, and then the deference DA.
All right, advantage 1, advantage 2, then the advantage counter plan. Then next,
The federalism DA,
got it?
the capacity DA, and then the deference DA. Is everyone good?
Yeah.
No circumvention, durable fiat entails Trump complies in good faith, so he adheres to agreement. Their card only says that there's currently zero enforcement. That's only because Trump backtracked on CBs, which RF solves. FLRA has quorum now. At worst, durable fiat until fiating, and before when you see Handler, its empirical studying show that hostile presidential administrations still enforce labor rights, and there's no difference between win rates based on political affiliation. 1 and C2 strikes are not key units to enforce protectionism with litigation and bargaining. 1 and C3 expertise works. It combines science to base specific knowledge and institutional memory to produce optimal outcomes. That's mirrored. Trump not listening doesn't matter. The federal government is too complex, so administration works despite obstruction. 1 and C4 loyalism is happening. True loyalism is not necessary, since they just have to be too afraid to resist him, even if they don't truly agree with that. 1 and C5 Doge cuts aren't at all cause. They're being litigated and overturned by the courts in the status quo, and the effective federal government is key to overcome resource scarcity. 1 and C5 structural administrative weakness is wrong. Their evidence is describing the plan and the effective Doge cuts, which we said are overturned, and the plan would solve it. They say no alliances impact civil services, makes foreign policy credible by clarifying executive actions. Alliance credibility contains right-of-way proliferation and deterrence nuclear revisionism. When war with Russia, China, and North Korea, that's branch. Yes, deterrence breakdown because it obfuscates diplomacy and causes conflict escalation. The CDC is effective. They combine cutting-edge scientific expertise with public guidance to develop cures, vaccines, dispense public health and info. The alternative would be worse because it would mean literally no government guidance. Yes, disease impact, future breakdowns, bypass immunity, outpacing herd immunity, defenses and assume globalization that spreads, that speeds up spread. That's the came evidence. Civil service dysfunction is existential. They dropped, it collapses competent management of disease, nuclear war, disasters, and environment, but an effective federal workforce caps their impact, reduce Schulman. Yes, economy downturn makes great powers conflict-prone. Defense is refuted by hard data and does not assume the U.S. China through state trap, which makes recession unique, which that's shame. They also drop cyber attacks, cause conflict escalation, confusion, kinetic backlash, that's just slander on evidence, and mega disasters cause extinction. It causes conflict escalation, global grid and infrastructural breakdown. Overreach. Trump foreign policy outweighs it, shatters global rule of law, collapses alliance networks, and provokes global revision, trading Russia and China proving independently. Centralization makes a convergence of environmental and nuclear risk, and locking in misguide. That's the Homer Dixon evidence. It doesn't cause conflict. It is empirically disproven by Venezuela, and systemic buffers don't solve. 1, overlapping threats cause extinction, even if individual risks don't by themselves. 2, Trumpian irrationality ensures crisis, not solutions. They say that unions will be ineffective. That's wrong empirically. They work, and they're not toothless. They pursue well-funded legal defenses by aggregating resources, which is why protections are broadly enforced in past administrations. Trumpian populism outweighs lax nuclear controls combined with a loyalist villain that guarantees ethno-nationalism and goes nuclear through first use, miscalculation, and treaty violations. That's the Jackson evidence. Trump strengthened alliances backwards, but it also just means that they can't say that. There's all causes, since the only thing that's stopping alliance strength is an effective civil service that can enforce protections. The advantage counterplan. Permutation do both. It shields by including the counterplan signal. Permutation do the counterplan, perm do the plan, and any combination of planks. Conditionality is a voting issue, and dispositionality. No cost options reproduce the tweezy by forcing it to waste time on irrelevant issues and changing how it answers this as a key, since it incentivizes in-depth research and trains the next to be unprepared applicants. Counterinterpretation is unconditionality. Reject the team for deterrence, if not reject the counterplan. Dispositionality doesn't solve our offense because it forces us to forfeit permutations, which are the best arguments against counterplans. But bargaining is key. 1, trust workers think employment rights alone or paper promises, organized representations, the key enforcement mechanisms. That's why they insisted it was essential. That's Handler 1 and 2. If civil servants feel expertise, protection, or insufficient, the system collapses. Unions are empirically helpful and familiar. That's co-law. Win rates prove unions provide civil service with financial space and defense that individual employees can't afford. That's Handler 2. Enforcement. Unions can lobby and litigate individual employees can't. That's Handler. Specifically, only unions grant workers sweeping control over staffing practices, backstopping loyalism. Anything else is worked around or the links that net benefit. That's Kellogg 3. Worker and civil service protections only cover entry and approval. CVs cover everything in between banking and scientific integrity requirements and safeguards against punitive transfers. That's Handler enduring. For productivity, the process of collective bargaining quells unproductive disputes, boosting efficiency. Lack thereof collapses administrative function. Okay, 19. Grievance rights after dissatisfaction, grievance position can hand a possible organizational outcomes that harmonize liberal relation resolve through union made opportunity bringing grievance to the start grievance for relevant efficiency result frustration dissatisfaction low productivity disrupt organization grievance that all release to commitment to work making sabotage rights to incidents collective bargaining is essential to industrial harmony. Preventing strikes action performance the spirit of oneness. The employer complains consider maintaining harmonious relation for reducing unnecessary aggressive performances and individual vital or efficient harmony relationship enhance survival. The counterplan does this all better even if attacks predated Trump's second term. The reason that they didn't escalate is because workers had bargaining units. Bargain over staffing practices, which Lamone says it's key, and the plan durably fields compliance, preventing external infringements. Whistleblowing fields. Experts only value it if it's bargained for, otherwise it's perceived as favoritism and is less trusted. That's Handler. Independently, the scope of protections is uncertain, and it only protects speaking out against legal non-compliance, but doesn't shield partisan firings, and units create communal vacuum, which is more certain than one-on-one legal battles. Restoring Humphrey's fields. It requires that Congress resist Trump's infringement on interdependence. That would never happen since 25. Trump expanded the power of the office of Congress only of the reach with their system authority. No majorities remains overwhelmingly loyal to become an over team, not a good government until check campaign funds. You raise use of threat and team for Republicans. Impeachment fails. It's a temporary fix at best. Alternatives like Ramaswamy fill in your head. 24 ungoverning does not depend on the former president. Anti-institutional institutionalized Trump 2-minute amendment and voted in large numbers. Almost all candidates emulated. Ramaswamy shut down the amnesty. Impeachment trigger institutional delegitimation and unconstrained foreign policy. Specifically, 23 place regime directive regime transition presidential interruption ambiguous of term black religious presidential failures between internal regime causes foreign police will respond to international perception regarding legitimacy, domestic legitimacy, combining international respect. Impeachment weakens international legitimacy. Democratic breakdown. The perception triggers escalation. Means 21 neutralize the perceptual weakness for working against global conflict. Use of force against Taiwan. Calculating an effective response to March 4th nuclear change. The powerful fact of holding back miscalculation but coherent. Foreign policy and resolve. Reversing the PSA fails. No evidence that they'll reinstate units or link to net benefit. Inevitably collapses and relapses Trumpism since all the remaining presidents are on their deathbeds. The federalism game. Non-unique annulling most civil service that haven't left as Schumacher. Federal layoffs collapse. Private sector overwhelms state hiring. We're just 150,000 federal employees accepted by and expertise orders to the federal workers private sector jobs. No impact. Federalism doesn't produce effective policies. Government 22. Robot is successful at first, but federalism is a direct source of each being held back to marching, increasing number of players crossing politics in this violation of loyalty, incredibly influence politics, corruption, waters down federalism, human 21 states regularly diverting money to the from sensitive from suffrage blocking innovative policies that they drive as Supreme Court decision automatically ability of to replace conditional on taken from the director of the world and on how Perkins for Nigeria managing over the years. Trump slaughters the states. The plan solves no 25. Trump program in New York State, California, local fishermen as the states sued. Illinois is coming obstructing immigration policy, federalism, script, education, the states, respecting the reception for system, and unreached concern to cut off the federal funds, spending his White House with the local. Federalism message reaches such a bit of virtual return of the self-government, want to eliminate reasonable federal influence, more aggressive predecessor to multi-policy resistant Congress overwhelmingly supported. Go to the capacity DA, is try or die act, even if he can't push through his policies, gutting expertise is sufficient to aim for response, that's karma. It totally ruins governance. He 24. Agency of changing food, water, air poisons no longer qualified experts that survival destruction of bureaucracy since the government employees chose to quit international wipeout capacity to provide accurate info. Agencies have been ability to form that doesn't exist anymore. It's not just about rollback. Undermining the functional machinery of government is all he needs. Robert's 25 also tell the top agencies affected by its applicants and operational failures beyond regulatory rollback rules that we're making with the government and circumventing procedures and assuming unpredictable introducing a structural volatility, removing personal functional machinery. Clearly, he's trying to paradigm shift. The plan durably resists Trump's agenda. One fiat. It mandates conflict negotiation, ensuring cooperation. 2 electoral costs. Trump cares about his base internal resistance, dampens his agenda, favor self-preservation. 3 bargaining CBs, grant control over staffing practices, stymieing Trump. That's his most important tool for controlling the parts of agenda that get through. That's Kellogg and Handler for discretionary authority. Civil servants play a substantial role in shaping public policy, allowing them to fill the gaps and correct Trump. Deregulation is succeeding, worsening warning. Phyllis 25. AP the federal pollution and informative false news repression of the markets of federal climate nation Trump AP rollback testing for the ability to clean energy related program will worsen warming unions contracts encourage EP to staff to send with fear of unjust termination 2025 EP staff first scientific technical provision of whistleblower continue to conduct and federal scientists cannot be pressured to align with this political agenda. No warming impact international all causes is thumped by decades. It would be survivable and we would just adapt. Go to the difference. An unconstrained executive impedes all crisis response. That's Homer Dixon. The risk of a rogue executive is not unique to Trump to try or die for structural change. Higgins 24. Later economic benefits from making more autocratic and making claims of authority, security, and morally unilateralism. The president, any president, non-Christian rule, flock, delayed withdrawal of legal or political president, judicial, and control for all of the branches to exercise the authority. Can you hand me the effective?
It's at the bottom of the top D.
Okay. Intel is resilient. Allies adapt to its fears mitigating impacts to bill. 25. Partisan versus mitigate accordingly. For size, especially the US UK Intel survived crisis relationship proof resilient. Once again, the impact is zero. All causes intelligence can't solve, and the UK checks says support for the intelligence failures from politicization, obstacles for sources, biases, and poor communication, insufficient resources, security focused mission, existential threats, spread, intelligence targeted immediate threats, risks can be neglected. UK have the ability to integrate crisis existential challenges within the boundaries agencies, mounted stakeholders outside its partners coordination remains superior to effective responses, and Trump's erratic nature circumvents North flex code triggering every hotspot. Gold 25. Waterworks 3 are invisible Ukraine, Pakistan, and AG are nuclear.
No link.
Huh? Market nuclear sites. Good for crossings. Cool.
Okay. On the advantage counter plan, you made an argument about how workers had bargaining before, and that's why there wasn't an escalation. Can you describe, it seems like on the other flow, you're making arguments about how this is not just about Trump, but there are more structural issues with executives, so why did bargaining
Those
stall
things
before?
are totally distinct. We've said that past administrations show that bargaining is effective, both at producing good outcomes and making sure all of these other employment protections are enforced. On other pages, we've said that the problems with Trump will occur with future administrations. i.e. like his erratic foreign policy is not unique to Trump.
Okay, why will other presidents adopt Trump's model of foreign policy?
Because Trump's foreign policy style has been institutionalized within the GOP and the MAGA movement, and so future Republican administrations will adopt similar approaches to alliances and government.
Yeah, but it seems like a lot of Republicans are moving away from like the MAGA base.
That's an assertion that's not true. All of our evidence indicates that this has been broadly adopted by Republicans.
That's fine. What was the crackdown argument on the counterplan?
So we've said that federal workers don't perceive that that protections will be enforced unless they have unions, because unions are the only institution that makes sure that they're enforced, because they provide litigation, legal defenses.
Okay, well, I guess like I'm confused because the counterplan's protections are like under labor law, not employment law. So, or employment law, not labor law.
Unions have a broader role than just enforcing CBAs. They also enforce the rights of workers against their employers.
How do unions implicate employment law?
Because when employers violate the rights of workers, unions litigate on their behalf. Like, they're the main defense that workers have. The counterplan forces workers to individually be in charge of their cases. So it would be one federal civil service worker against the entire Trump administration.
Like, why are unions key to like class
The
action
classes of workers are represented by the unions. The counterplan means that individual workers have to enforce their own rights against Trump, which is impossible.
So I guess in order for there to be an impact to this argument, you have to win that workers perceive that the law will not be enforced.
Yeah, and we've read a stack of evidence that says as much.
Gotcha. Is there anything else you want me to ask about?
We're gonna be covering that 13.
Alright, so are we at 10:40?
I think we're at 13. Oh, never mind. We're at 10:40. Yeah. Yeah. So we're gonna. While people are reading, the order is the counterclaim, the capacity dissent,
The what just said?
the capacity dissent,
I still can't hear you.
capacity, and then the expertise advantage, and then the overreach advantage. Michigan, pretty good. And then Dallas, too. Dallas, you're good. Okay, great. 1. Civil service modernization outweighs the case. The admin state is systematically broken for reasons. I started my timer. Okay. Far beyond the plan, pay scales and job classifications have not been revisited in 70 years. Managers cannot pay good performers or fire bad, and there are fractured 120 hiring authorities, 28 pay systems, and disjointed training. That's Neil and Lyman. 2. The 1AC tries to solve a systemic crisis by just hoping that unions will bargain for the necessary protections. Planks 1 to 4 address these issues directly by fiating those protections, empowering agency managers to flexibly hire, drastically increase pay and job security for high performance, and fire low performance. It eliminates political interference by reinstating civil service exams and prohibiting political firing, which reinstates the merit-based system that they said solves in 1AC crosslinks. 3. Air negligence efficiency. Their internal link was every impact on Advantage 1 was insulating experts from political pressure, which Plank 1 directly bans. Plank 6 has the Supreme Court restore Humphrey's executor, which reestablishes protections for independent agencies, and Plank 8 adopts a scientific integrity policy, which ensures the administration uses science to do everything. That puts a premium on hiring experts because they're necessary for Trump to do anything. The Dorning evidence in the 1AC is about preventing politicization and ensuring scientific integrity, which the counterpoint fiats. I will insert that in gray, but they also drop Plank 5, which reverses and prohibits Trump's budget cuts and deregulatory efforts. That solves allies, disease, and econ, because internal link to that was all just budget cuts and deregulation. Now 5 is an espionage internal link. It's about civil service being dismissed out of hand and looking for jobs when laid off. The kind of one reinstates federal workers that are high value, which solves Walton 25. Civil service are reduced out of hand sense of agreements that off as under about their job process. 6. Their evidence says overhaul of the entire administration is key to solve credibility. Schuster 25. Rebuilding civil service with the civil service reverse migration, desiccated market equivalents to creating a partition to media career alliance. And Sweezy one is do both. It links to the deference and net benefit because it triggers court executive deference and triggers court president. Do the kind of one is severance to the voting issue for argumentation or responsibility because the kind of one does not strengthen collective bargaining rights. Any combination of the plank still links to the court president. Do you know condo adjustment will be in the 1 hour now. Sweezy forwards bargaining key. 1 is that expert commission is a catch-all. If they're right that some specific protection is crucial to satisfaction, it will get included. Through 2, the kind of solves the impact of the deficit. The total package replicates the benefits of the union without the efficiency and capacity cost state experiments through Glock. And Nuclear 225, reform made it was that will pay based on performance of the bargaining guys have been improved performance of little legislation, things with bargaining report, efficient service studies that get more satisfaction, general studies, and clear unions, increase costs and reduce efficiency of the strong states of attempts and variations, reduce distortion of interest, has created ethical working environment without public testing. The system now, we see 5 was that their key to legal defense. First is a clarification that the Canada does not abolish unions, just collective bargaining rights. So the institution of unions would still exist. They would still be able to coalesce workers, and they would still be able to lodge a legal defense. 2, the counterpoint solves the need for legal defense because the counterpoint enshrines the worker protections that they would be suing for. 3, the counterpoint that includes ironclad prohibitions, which ensures that it's enforced. It's far more certain than just totally reversing on the abolition of CBR. 5 is the counterpoint includes scientific integrity, so it solves the quote more coverage argument. Now, the 2AC 6 was productivity and disputes. 1 is that they link to uncertainty. The plan is seen as just another example of whiplash with CBRs being axed and then restored and axed again. That can't create long-term certainty since it signals that protections lack broad support. That's Neil 2. Enshrining protections in the law is far more stable than hoping management concedes them in bargaining contracts. The Cabinet fields the quality assurance, performance metrics, and productivity. What is that? Their evidence says unions help work towards. 3, the Cabinet solves dissatisfaction for workers, which means it doesn't matter because there won't be conflict about what they want. 5, it links to the app because bargaining is inherently adversarial and causes more disputes. 6, informal consultation solves. Tabarino, Junior 11, Department can attend consultation rights and formal meetings with New York, focus on relationship building, training, expanded leave, Senate, earnings, saving because the collaborative planning process is mutual best interest to collaborate on the process about what that value have improved workplace. 6, fiat solves counterproductive disagreement. Merit-based hiring means employees cannot just shirk duties and it bans political intimidation. 7, fiat includes whistleblower protections. Workers can leak and criticize unjust employee behavior. 2C 8 was trust. There's no mistrust. Their evidence assumes the status quo, CBR, but not the full package of the counterpoint, which is a comprehensive process of world-class pay and increased merit-based protections. 2, trust is not necessary because the counterpoint feels what workers want to negotiate for. They say uncertain. I answered that above. They are far more uncertain, and destroying Humphrey does work. Their evidence is not about the Humphrey's executor. Our evidence is that restoring the Humphrey's executor ensures agency independence. Now, impeachment, it solves. It removes the proximate threat because all their foreign policy stuff is about Trump causing that sees unique incentives to start wars. Impeachment prevents autocratization by establishing permanent safeguards of democracy. It sets a precedent that signals to all future presidents that they cannot violate the rule of law. Impeachment is key to legitimacy, which answers your add-on. Mahamatra 25. Trump returned to act like a monarch, called for impeachment transactions, put democracy at risk, removing lawless men is the only way to restore power under rule of law, seeking federal control of considered violating the First Amendment, inhibiting opponents, undermining judicial independence of property, but against allies and enabling church other charges, like impeachment case breakdown of the Constitution. They said Trump bad, which proves that the impeachment is certainly legitimate, and perception of weakness is now Trump is withdrawn from treaties and alliances, which means that the impeachment is key. Capacity. I'm not going for this as offense, but I'll extend that they cannot control bargaining objectives, which means they cannot solve any of the advantage. First is that they say they can fiat good faith. That is wrong. I'll answer that on the case, but they cannot solve any of Trump's policies. One is bargaining scope. Employees granted bargaining rights are low-level frontline workers, not political appointees who actually formulate policy. Two, presidential override. They're legally subordinate to president's rights to determine agency's mission, budget, organization, and security practices. That's Hitler, which is the one in C part. Three is obedience. Employees rarely resist policy because it's got 23. Analysis of civil servants are in trouble or more also engage in wait and see intrusion on avoid damage to relations with policing within line set by an admin supervisor or reminiscence toward design. It would be an effective efforts to do with the balance of advisors and servants that seek responsiveness, even told approaches feel like dislodging agency and most standards fail to equip them all credits for all evidence is about influencing policy, but not about being able to reverse policy. Trump bombing Venezuela is irrelevant if they just put experts there to make sure that that bombing threat is credible. Now, they say, okay, that's fine. And then we didn't read warming impacts, so there's no offense. The case. Advantage. One is one is circumvention. One is Trump capture. The FLRA is a 2-1 majority of anti-union former management reps with a history of bad faith bargaining. Two, they'll endorse a skeleton version of strengthening CBR that's a little more than zero. Arlington supports narrower grievance procedures, increased discipline mechanisms to leading whistleblower safeguards, and bad faith bargaining. The plan text does not fiat any of those because once again, Michigan read a big plan, which means they cannot guarantee that any of those safeguards are included in enforcement. Three, management wins 90% of the time. Why 19? The Trump majority overturned arbitration every 100% of my the first 94 cases. The agency won 83 times. The decisions read arbitration may listen have a chilling effect on labor talk decision not to obey general counsel effectively block under labor practice complaints. Four is that unions won't pursue cases. Jamie said 18. FLRA is so much but isn't already unions become less likely to pursue cases depending on political appointees they consider a waste of time. Fiat does not solve the plan. Only requires strengthening collective bargaining rights. No part of the plan guarantees that the FLRA is enforced or that penalties are increased. You know this because if we read a pink out of appointing the general counsel or of increasing enforcement, they would go for a perm to the counter plan. Two, they can solve deterrence of unions and the chilling effect, and they also cannot fiat away FLRA bias, which is totally mindset fiat. There's no offense because specifying results. Okay, and then also, when it's for loyalism is impossible. Dems will organize them win the midterms if Trump is super unpopular, and Trump is gradually losing enthusiasm because he's terrible for the economy, which means that there is resistance. That's the Madlovic's evidence. Now, 286 and 186 was that there are structural alt causes to credibility. There, which Schlusser evidence, which we re-highlighted, says that Trump has not broken a functioning machine, but rather exposed one, quote, already in deficit. Their part is about Trump threatening to invade Greenland, threatening territorial sovereignty. Diplomats making that credible does not solve anything. Now, when it's for no disease impact, burnout, and lethality is super low. COVID obviously some through globalization. During COVID, it's always, quote, the next pandemic, but that's never caused extinction. Vaccines obviously solved. The federal workforce does not cap our intel sharing impact because intel specifically is classified information that the federal workforce cannot access. When it's no econ war, countries turn inwards because they're economically weak, and there's no correlation because there have been 40 recessions and 20 interstate wars that have not related. Cyber attacks is turned by the DA, which means that we'll start turning it counterban. Or sorry, the managing overreach. Okay. There's no Trump foreign policy impact. One is that he has not shattered rule of law. First term disproves, and Venezuela didn't escalate, which is the only choice he wore. Two, term one proves AF is empirically denied. Alarmism. Grade 24. Trump's actual foreign policy make it clear the one is very little substance to reality. Trump chose not to take foreign intervention. American deterrence to be lost. Like the Trump was not an accident. It was deliberate action. Trump. American workforce have the Middle East and blockers, pulled quad and rebel troops in the front line. Europe and Pacific. Trump's policy for those in practice and growth for fear more valid though. Well, that was not a Trump. Two, he won't escalate, but unpredictability dampens aggression. Insult. 25. Trump has represented one policy to refuse to send troops. Is not going to produce the risk of clashes between American and Chinese. Or Russian told to specter World War III. Switching Trump's unpredictability to some of the missions of China. If China attacks on Trump, we do not know if we does not reflect ceasefire. Trump will become and Ramsey's policy. Term 2 will be more restrained, not less. Lynch. 24. Will Trump 1.0 return means re-uptake on defense force. Seriously, Trump by Berkeley, Eisenberg, and turning to Democrats. Back to workers that be able to spare. All second presidents are linked up to power to space as their clock. She's supposed to second terms and scandal exhaustion. Trump 2.0 would not be outdated. He will face the same structural questions. They when it's the Constitution can be removed. Cheats are worn by Trump as by every president. Now, there's no poly crisis impact. Problems are self-correcting. For example, when supply falls, elastic demand cushions it. 2008 also was bad, but it triggered needed industrial policy to solve climate change. The Ukraine war has increased renewable energy development. All these are examples of why there's not a negative feedback loop of a bunch of overlapping risks, and Trump is not irrational because of our evidence above. Now, 1 and 3 is that unions cannot solve any of this. They cannot solve Trump going crazy or, quote, using first use in the event of the populism impact. The litigation and protests are fake. This is all lukewarm evidence that it has just been just one-day demonstrations that to amount to nothing in the face of Trump. Confrontation fails because unions cannot strike, which means there's no leverage. Lynch 25. Unions were open confrontation, especially federal use, structure, program strike, basis, really hypocritical ability to respond to right-leaning judiciary rule in Congress. Unions have exerted power to lobby while neglecting direct action over laws of legal bureaucratic channel conduct.
Are you good?
Yeah.
Alright, so do we think we're at 1047 or 1147?
We stopped at 11:27.
1127, got it, okay. Here we go.
If an agency head breaks the law and fires workers, what would be the workers' immediate recourse?
Well, first is that the counterclaim bans that because it bans political coercion, firing, or dismissal for political reasons.
Okay, so
Second,
what if they
workers would
make
still
up
be
a
able to
phony
access
allegation to
union legal
investigate them,
resources.
like they're doing with the Fed, falsely claim that the worker is showing up late? Like, what would the worker do?
Wait, no, the counterclaim prevents the worker needing to do anything because the counterclaim bans being
No,
able
they
to
make
fire
up a
agencies.
cause and fire them. What is the plan, what does the counter plan do?
Yeah, so two things. First is that the ban on politicization means that it would have rigorous evidentiary process
Okay,
for evaluating whether or
I-
not
my
that claim was
question is
political.
like,
The
what
second
does
is
the
that-
worker do in the
Yeah, the
case of
second
that
is
process?
very important. The counterclaim doesn't abolish unions, so unions would still be a collective organization that would able to provide
Wait,
legal
so what's the
resources for
difference
workers.
between the counterplan and the plan?
The counterplan abolishes the ability for unions to bargain with management. But unions exist even absent CBR. That's why the AFGE is still alive and a lot of unions
Sorry,
are
what
organizing
evidence
protests.
says you can have unions without bargaining?
I mean, that's like Google. So many unions are operating now without collective bargaining rights.
So what's
They
the
still operate as worker organizations where workers can
when
organize
unions
and communicate.
when unions sue or advocate on behalf of the workers, how is that not bargaining?
That's suits, like legal suits in court. Because we have because
Why
collective
is that not a
bargaining
part
rights
of
are
the
when
process of bargaining with the managers?
because that is in court when the union goes to trial. Is that what you're referencing? Like the union goes to trial. Our evidence is the AFGE is suing
Okay.
the president now because
What
they have
what
violated.
basis does the
says
counterplan use to restore unions, and how does that avoid the link to the DA?
So one, unions are not key because the counterplan provides
Well, that wasn't my
like
question.
like the counterplan instates merit-based protections. Second, the counterplan doesn't need to restore unions because our evidence says
You
that
just said it
unions
restores
still
unions.
exist post abolishing CBR.
Unions
to
don't
be
exist.
super
Trump
precise-
got rid of them on the
No,
basis
Trump
of
got
national
rid- Trump got
security.
rid
Your
of
DA is
any
about
collective
national
bargaining
security.
rights. Trump got rid of the ability for unions
No,
to
he
bargain
got
with
rid of the
management.
unions.
But the
Like,
status
he
quo, in
banned
the status quo,
unions.
unions are suing Trump, which proves that unions still exist.
They're
even if
suing.
collective bargaining
They're
rights are
suing
abolished.
to exist. Like he said, like
No,
he
they're suing
banned
to
the
be able
unions.
to
Okay,
bargain
I think I
because
made
the
my point.
contracts were canceled.
You said
But obviously unions
impeachment
have
would
an incentive
restore
not just to
credibility
dissolve.
and the rule of law. Why would JD Vance's foreign policy be reassuring in a way that Trump's wasn't?
Well, the counterplan sends a signal via impeachment that any president that violates the rule of law
How
or
does that
separation of
overcome
powers.
this signal
Hold on.
of someone with
president-
identical policies to
No,
Trump?
because JD Vance would adjust to the fact that he knows the threat of impeachment is credible. So he would be like, I don't want to succumb to the same conviction and removal, which means I will be more responsible with my foreign policy.
We're gonna keep the timer running, but start prep.
Okay.
Seven oh seven.
Sounds like an airplane.
Okay.
Ready?
Yeah, sending it out. Okay, that's sent. Oh, sorry.
Okay, it will be the advantage counter plan at the top. And then the federalism dissent, and then the deference dissent.
Federalism difference.
Yeah. Okay, everyone good?
So, yeah.
Yeah, I'm good.
You're good now. Okay. Great. At the top, I'll finish extending Nor's solvency arguments. The counterplan creates internal oversight without leaking info to the judiciary. George 18 from SSP, person easily create basic internal oversight with IT who best APs have success. IT on court be success the most. Competence is better than the judiciary have access to all info across all jurisdiction. And the counterplan solves exec flex by creating internal oversight without leaking info. There's disincentive for abuse, reputational costs. Okay, skip that. Just kidding. Okay, answering dispo. It's key to neg flex because it allows the neg to test different aspects of the 2AC. 1, does not create no-cost options. Riskless free turn deters bad counterplans. 2, no offense from forfeiting permutations to benefit to the app because they would not only not permit the counterplans bad. 3, reject the argument that the team 4 skew is inevitable because of TA procedurals and the disads.
Actually, can you just so
Back to the counterplan.
extending the plank about congressional
Okay,
oversight.
extending the congressional oversight plank. The United States federal government should...
Just say it solves and then read the plank.
Okay, it solves. Evans 18 oversight committees should include reforms overlapping misdemeanor university hackers foreign assistance obsolete constraints and training rules training and creative research allocation and info programming. It should violate ensure the executive respond to raise effectively careful to determine how effective the response is. The committee received routine briefing on cover action. These are Republican Democratic lawmakers enable cross jurisdictional equities and oversight complex operations that would hearings and task forces increasing collaboration. The federalism dissent there's no impact to it not going forward. They already conceded that there's no impact to climate change and will answer that will concede that the states don't solve anything. The deference dissent. Okay. At the top, the 2AC included the same argument over and over again. The only way they can beat this dissent is to win at the eternal impact level that Trump makes the impact inevitable, which is wrong because no 1AC card says that Trump will mess with our commitment to the Five Eyes Alliance. They did not contest that overturning the court as normal means or the internal link that SSP is key to intelligence, so you should not let them make it because those arguments would be new. Now, intel gathering prevents a convergence of incoming existential risk that outweighs 1, fat tail risk, only forecasting checks impacts that are both uncertain and catastrophic. Nuclear war, runaway AI, pandemics, nanotech, geoengineering by adversaries are unstoppable. Absent mitigation, 2, novel escalation pathways, intervening actors cannot check without intel. Emerging tech makes reactive solutions too little too late, which was said support. 3, independently is the cornerstone of diplomacy and intel alliances. That's Kroner. The mere prospect of leaks wrecks the Five Eyes. Nakashima 3, 12 aligned disclosure of substantial negative effect on emphasize as counter intel foreign polar be reticent to information about concerns so much we could see. That causes Russian nuclear miscal. Rogers 14, the 5 of intel in the world use illegal harboring with NATO surveillance to being traditional missile force Russian factor uncertainty. The nuclear war fighting making the cost of missile grade and ability to ensure stronger security is vital at the UK in the US war intel gathering and sharing, and that activates every nuclear hotspot. Walsh and Miller 16, the 5 eyes. This counter espionage support regions provide understanding of China, Russia, Iran, and North Korea, Syria, Syria, and Libya, Iraq, Afghanistan, is around UK border. It's example of importance. Now that turns case first, it turns to foreign policy advantage because releasing info means that it doesn't matter what the Trump is doing because the info is out there anyway. 7 is the admin state advantage, ensuring the court is a strong check against Trump's alter expertise advantages by preventing him from using national security justifications when he gets sued by workers. Letting him off the hook in the court system means that unions are insufficient because they lack legal basis. Now, Tracy, 1 was that the app turns the impact. That's wrong. 1, the internal link was specific to intel gathering, allowing the military info to be leaked through disclosure means that Joe Schmo on the street knows where China stores its nuclear weapons. The internal link is measurably stronger than the 1AC because intel failure means that even an effective admin cannot respond. 2 is that proves it turns the case. Unions cannot prevent the courts from requiring intelligence disclosure. Disclosure is an all cause to the app, which means that they cannot solve if they only implicate the executive. 2 was that it's try or die to solve rogue executive. 1, the app cannot solve it. That was above. And 2 is that impeaching Trump solves. That's what their internal link is about. 3, counterplan solves. They said unions can check the executives. The counterplan solves the internal link to that. 4, the internal oversight plank solves because it ensures the executive never abuse secrecy. 5, that creates congressional oversight without leaking info. That was in the counterplan overview. 6 is courts are too inflexible and lack the non-legal expertise to design foreign policy. Fuchs 22, courts are not equipped to foreign policy. Does speak the law, not the law, sense of court and influence. Internal national sense of foreign policy don't may require statically willing doing negotiations with decisive decision making requires discussion of vice president historical events obtaining info responding change world condition resolution not written in law courts not legal issues out. 7, judicial involvement collapses credibility. Fuchs 22, juries are biased, unwilling to convict French practitioners. Jury prevents risk of bias against internal evolution of compassion, descending from Americanized international community degrading foreign serves in the 12 limit not understand policy will assess matters in the courtroom. 8, at most, it creates conflicting voices, which is the worst of old worlds. 9, exec flex is good and expansive. Article 2, souls terror, WMD prolif, and rogue nations and great power. U24, foreign affairs, unpredictable, involve high states, foreign affairs, minutes with decisive action by by rights and not sovereign vetoes or disagreements that change in the system of insertion by national security force on other 9/11, take a window opportunity to strike terrorist or rogue actions, executives, flex deliveries, lynch, passivity, and inaction at the price of speed or secrecy, challenges put by terrorism, morality, WMD prolif, greater power, only presidential must take the initiative home. 3 and 4 group them. They're both just impact defense to intel. That's wrong. All of their intel defense is nay because it is status quo descriptive. Their civil evidence says alliance partners understand what the risks are and can mitigate accordingly. The plan completely tears down the limits of what the risks are now because it removes the trust barrier that we won't share away our allies' information. But this answers their impact inevitable argument because intel sharing is a filter that solves all the reasons that there would be extinction. Now, intel is not resilient. The allies will stop sharing if they think that there is a risk of leaking, which was our 1 and C evidence. Secrecy, caps escalation, preserves alliances, and stunts arms race spirals. Rovner 20, keeping secrecy and improves state cracks, and encourages Canada those in power accept the truth and after they get their political future secret future get along states that share they don't know how often arms are broken, take control, intelligence, body security, going to lead arms race, that security helps us states control escalation great powers, make cover, and retaliation leads to accusations. The Trump erratic argument is wrong. 1, they did not read this card, so there's no evidence that Trump will be able to circumvent strong regulations on information tech classification. And 2 is this is just the same argument as the exact flex argument, which I already answered. 3, interviruses erratic, that's good. Elaborate 25 times diplomacy using every ounce of leverage to be avoiding the will of worn out Trump is about to end the conflict around undermining sense of urgency, creativity, Trump is unreasonably useful. Everyone needs to be a little afraid of him. And 4, leaks are likely eroding state secrets. Privilege puts the classified mission critical information in the hands of any civilian who's not able to bring a case to court, which was the Kerner and the Howe evidence. The 5 was the no link argument, which was distinctly after the timer, so you certainly should not give them this argument, but I will answer just in case. Uncertainty about spillover alone induces excessive restraint, especially when the court breaks a long period of deference. D13, awareness of likely oversight national policy enforcement, executive alter policy before courts actually review uncertainty results in executive deference to the court litigation can jury the act more course when the court sees with national security after an extended period of non-involvement future will not need to overlap with that policy. Aaron Knight, even reviewing the validity of the national security privilege causes leaks. Trigger 16 that allow discovery before the dismissal is 1 degree mill requiring the privilege on these cases based risk of preventable disclosure of risk of security to the judge and ability to demonstrate likelihood of harm without really very to be shown and the judiciary's limited expertise.
Okay, those cards will be sent in the doc.
Dallas, so you can even wait for the cards.
Yeah.
Dallas, are you okay if we wait for the cards? They're like 4 or 5.
What?
Are you okay if we wait for the cards? Nora put like 4 or 5.
Okay.
Thank you.
We didn't send the speech stock out effectively. That's not good.
Yeah, that's my bad.
Tell me when you got it.
Okay. Okay, that should just be 3, right? Okay.
I think so.
Yeah, okay. I'm just presenting the same doc with the 3 cards at the top.
Okay, thanks.
How much? 707.
All right, you got it?
I do not.
No.
Did you send it, Nora? Oh, I just
Yeah,
got
yeah,
it.
it's
So here, give me 2 seconds to download it. Okay, I'm good. Send this in. minimum rates for it is advantage 1, advantage 2, so expertise and overreach, counterplan, capacity, deference.
Alright, case, counterplan,
Capacity, DA, turn.
and deference.
And then deference, yes.
I just got the docs. Sorry, can you repeat the off-case order again?
Counterplan, capacity, deference.
Okay.
Durable field souls, and conceals good faith passage, no rollback and stronger enforcement labor. Anything else makes Afghan unworkable because all branches are anti-labor. Reciprocity checks, they get durable counterplans, and DS based on normal meanings. And it's topical. CBR tells enforcement, Hirschman 81, intended to federal labor, but even CBA decreed election enforcement impact of CBR. History of anti-union is irrelevant because Trump and the exec and FLA are all part of the federal government. The process of bargaining is liberating, drop litigation and lobbying, overwhelm grievance procedures, and the ability to speak publicly solves. Dorning also says that they can negotiate standards into their contract. Wagner's old and not up to the status quo, reciting empirics and successful bargaining. Jameson concludes that FLRA solves, but they aren't pursuing now because they fear firing, no structural causes. Credibility, workers are the last line of defense, and picking up the phone, Shulman and Schulster dropped alliances, uphold nuclear stability, which is the brand's evidence. It makes sticks and carrots credible. Yes, disease, defense does assume termination shocks, and future diseases will be worse. Wall extinction is indicted by what wish are new economic hotspots and mean that causes extinction. Debt and fragile migrants meant past economic declines didn't cause war, but future ones will. The overreach advantage. Venezuela wasn't a nuclear power, so it's irrelevant, but then linearly increased the risk of a populist nuclear first strike via military junta. And then getting people out of the door. Belligerency is not pacifying if adversaries overreact or if Trump attacks first. Term 2 proves he's not is less term 2 restrained assumes good faith checks like the midterms in Congress, which have gone out the door. Yes, poly crisis. Trump is a unique accelerator that overcomes market checking and drop unions, interact with due process agency practice. And then loyalty over stopping illegal behavior. Shirk says it keeps precedent and causes SOP by contract. Now the advantage counterplan. The counterplan links to the net benefit as per their answer on do both. It says they would durably fiat multiple restrictions on Trump like congressional oversight and reversing Trump's belligerency, which means that it links to the DA. And then links to the DA. Now do both and do the counterplan. They said counterplans would restore unions and makes it functionally identical to the plan or incoherent since the point of unions is to collectively bargain double bind. Either the counterplan links to that benefit because it restores union, which Trump's banned on the basis of national security, or B, it doesn't restore unions, so it certainly links to our solvency deficits. Reject nuclearification. They can't say restore unions since it's not in the text. Now bargaining is key. One is trust. Unions, they're key to holding the government accountable for violations. Workers think the counterplan will be functionally enforced since it depends on non-union venues that are rigged for Trump, which is handler. Impact is a chilling effect. Experts only correct failures if they don't fear retribution. And then in order to maximize expertise, civil servants have to feel they have direct influence. And then 19, civil service and laws, policy, influence, value, agencies produce deciding what rate policy influence, influence based on probability assigned key role policy, include a policy make determination, which responded to or satisfied for the force of not expert reboot benefit other prefer not to this less problematic policy. Eliminating policy influence tanks experience, only the plan decreases attractiveness. Outside offers, Patelli and 11 executives can stem the tide of executive departure influence the capacity to political to more comment. Some policies less influence direction agency agency specific human capital not easy to replace. Stay or leave on the basis of policy making opportunity attractiveness offered. It's by senior leaders. Enforceable collective bargaining enshrines worker input into regulatory decision making. Stating your rights by shirk in 25 CBA. Prescribed on agency approach. Actually, I read that card on the first advantage in the 1EC, which was dropped in the 2NC. Now reject sufficiency because our impacts are linear. Morning 25 expertise. Need protection and problem solving improve lower instance. The burden reduction framework and problem solving instead of deploy expertise only was less like it. Offers stability along with more credible. And the most formal influence. Second, enforcement. Unions are organized representatives of employees. And since they pool resources to lobby in well-funded legal defenses, individual employees get run over. Like a rogue president off there. Third is productivity, labor disputes, disrupt administrations. Unions filter out frivolous suits that undermine good faith negotiations with the OBK evidence. Independently, the scope of protection is uncertain. It only protects speaking out against legal non-compliance, which doesn't shield partisan firings, and unions create communal backing, which is more certain than one-off legal matters. Now, the whistleblowing and merit-based protections claims without bargaining show expertise. One is trust. Without bargaining, civil servants are afraid of discretionary judgments. They're more comfortable with negotiating grievances, and only union protections have empirical support for whistleblowing. The second is scope. It's uncertain, which frightens experts. And whistleblowing only protects leaks about legal non-compliance, but experts are still afraid of giving unwelcome advice. Scientific expertise is insufficient. Policy questions on foreign policy. The alliances, economic and management, and cyber aren't scientific, and then leaving them out of the description of the campaign. Expert commissions fail without enforcement. Trump officials will circumvent and ignore the commission. Falsify records and levy false claims against workers and be believed. We don't link to uncertainty. Unions are more certain because they make workers believe in enforcement aren't trolling. The productivity is about suppressing erroneous suits, not certainty. And then banning political information fails when administrations speak like mob bosses since it's too vague of a statement. Impeachment fails. The successor is J.D. Vance, identical to Trump at best, which is Murhead. Unpredictable regime change also makes the U.S. look weak and unpredictable. Greenlighting deterrence collapse and global escalation, which is Spacito, which means their says it restores belief in the law, not in U.S. credibility. And congressional oversight playing obviously links to the DA since it curtails President national security question, but it doesn't solve because it doesn't restrain all of Trump's ability. Now, the capacity of the DA, they dropped every answer in the GC. One is durable fiat, which was on the case. Second, there's electoral resistance. Internal resistance exposes material interest in the favor of stopping Trump, which is block. Third is bargaining. Deregulation requires oppressive management techniques. Unions leverage, create contractual stopgaps, and independently lobby Congress. They can't bargain. They can bargain for mission and budgets. And the civil service is 95% of the government function, which is also on the case. Now, the difference, DA. Massive internal link impact message. One NC and one in our internal is about safeguarding intel from adversaries. SAS support is about providing intel to policymakers to address X risk. They are just hodgepodge cards about intel but no internal link. Case turns the DA. Drop espionage. Dismiss workers. Become hotspots for financial espionage and give up information, which is what I see wanted, but there's no impact. Five Eyes exists no matter what. Our evidence says that it's resilient and the UK has intelligence expertise. And remember, the SSP does nothing to stop intel gathering. No impact to Russia or Trump Nixon inevitable. Sherman in 23. Likely Russia use baggage for long with obviously but level leader believe might be a suicide of reference to police Russia nuclear rhetoric, which was the extent to which leaders would differ for leverage. Mark the card at leverage. Every other intel add-on they read says that Five Eyes is a way to ways to manage crisis escalation, but doesn't say it's the only means, which means that a checking Trump is a better check on intelligence. There's no internal. We read cards on this that they dropped. One, classification has existed for centuries and will exist at some level no matter what, which is terminal defense. Anything else defies logic because clearance or bedrock. And then the bar for their internal is intelligence solving all global extinction. Second, this failures, politicization, bureaucratic obstacles, poorly evaluated sources, cognitive biases, and ruined communication, which is also there when it sees SASPER events. It's insufficient. SASPER 23. I see not only second extent not responsible for fighting, the risk building resilience. Greatest threat to politicization, puke in 25 biggest child every day. When a political economy, political structure, and God can lead encounter from some leadership, respect institution, be supported. Leadership, so polite. The block read new link evidence, so we get new answers, and they read a new impact out about broad executive power. But so this stumps it. Sherman C in 25. Article not sorry Morrison also remove a good cost argued constitutional limits. Removing corporate directive detection of Humphrey's Weiner of liability. Limit the removal of Nicola Jude Weiner approve independent ages article. The whole cost for corporate ages absolute independence.
Okay, 746.
I'm at 750.
Okay, sounds good. Just wait. is the deference dissent, the counterplay, capacity,
What?
the capacity dissent, advantage to the overreach one, and then expertise. Alright, everyone good?
We're going for the cyber attacks impacted the dissent, which they dropped at the DA turns. It was in the 1AC. Cyber attacks caused escalation because both Russia and China would access critical information about the U.S. infrastructure. They would be able to cyber and hack that effectiveness of the infrastructure. The U.S. perceives that as nuclear retaliation, which causes escalation on both sides and causes both countries to launch nukes, which they said causes extinction and outweighs their nebulous polycrisis impact or the impact to disease and etc. because it is an immediate and proximate reason why both adversaries have an incentive to escalate. It turns all of their arguments about being able to counter adversaries per advantage to or being credible because allies would lose all faith in the U.S.'s ability to securely communicate with diplomacy. They dropped that impact and it is guaranteed because they read it. Now, there's no chance of a no internal leak argument. The 2AC did not question the internal leak at all, so this is the new argument. But yes, the internal leak is coherent. Their evidence says that the plan creates a precedent of the courts questioning executive invocations of national security exemptions because the way that Trump ended CPR was by saying that it is a national security question. The plan requires that courts question that claim to national security, which then brings a long trend of court deference to the executive when they do say things about national security because courts don't want to interfere with determinations of foreign affairs. We have read evidence that the only thing that protects the state secrets privilege now is the national security exemption and the fact that none of the courts question it because the reason that the executive gets the state secret privilege is because it is relevant to national security. No, the executive does not have, the state secrets privilege says that the executive does not have to disclose requested information in court because it is sensitive to the military. The court currently refuses to question any invocation of that privilege because they don't want to interfere with it. The plan brings a long trend of that difference, and that is important. Even breaking the trend, and even the courts just questioning the privilege causes the leaks because in the process of figuring out whether or not the president accurately invoked the privilege, it would cause leaks because they have to analyze the facts of the case, whether or not there actually is a threat abroad, whether or not they actually had a diplomatic relationship with this country, or whether or not the CIA was actually in that country, which causes the cyber attacks impact. They say espionage. They drop the counterpoint solves their internal link to espionage, but not ours, but does not trigger ours, which I'll do on the counterpoint page. The Five Eyes is not resilient. The court is a super short, tweezy court that doesn't say anything. It just says that Five Eyes have weathered, quote, shocks, but our evidence says that the mere possibility of leaks wrecks the Five Eyes because the Five Eyes would not want to share intelligence about Russia and China's cyber cooperations if they know that that intelligence could be potentially leaked. If any single civilian goes to court, sues, and requests classified information that the executive is now potentially required to compel. Now, SSB does stop intel gathering. Specifically does because it is about secrets and the ability for the intel gathering to be secret. Now, classified info existing for centuries. It's our argument because that is uniqueness for us, but the possibility of questioning it causes the executive to change their policies. No failures or all causes. Their thumpers and all causes were totally new in the one year. Strike it off your flow because block strategies based on 2AC mishaps, but the counterplan bans politicization, which solves politicization, all costs to the intel gathering, and we're not going for the laundry list. Impacts for the system where recutting is irrelevant. Counterplan. At the top, the counterplan solves better than the plan. The 1AC has said a bunch of protections are key, but does not have a bargaining keyword. The counterplan fiats those protections while avoiding the extra step of relying on good faith management bargaining to hopefully get there, which solves way better. That fiat includes empowering agency managers to flexibly hire, drastically increasing pay and job security for high performance, and firing low performers. It eliminates political interference by reinstating civil service exams and prohibiting political firing. That solves way better than the plan, which preserves the arcane 128 hiring authorities and extremely low pay for federal workers, which disincentivizes any federal workers from trying to even come back to the federal government. Now, the permutation leads to an executive difference. Now, the congressional oversight stuff solves any impact turns on the dissent. Remember, the dissent is not executive flex, but state secrecy good. The counterplan plan that establishes oversight committees solves the reasons X-Flex is bad by ensuring Congress advises the executive and checks abuses of rule of law and covert action committees. That does not trigger the link because the link is about people being able to sue Trump and Trump having to reveal secret info in the court. Now, the counterplan does not link to just because it preserves unions, because the counterplan doesn't restore unions. Unions are an informal organization that are not abolished. The AFGE still exists. They're suing Trump now. They don't have legal collective bargaining rights. We're not saying that those unions are legally recognized now, but we're saying they still have the informal infrastructure and collective legal resources to support workers in their recourse too. The counterplan certainly does not link to DA because it specifically just ordered ending CBR of unions was based on national security. Now, at the top of the deficits, you cannot vote for a deficit when you don't know the impact to it. They drop multiple carded realities of their 1AC evidence that says that administrative overhaul solves because the Schlusser evidence says that the increasing pay, etc., is what is necessary to solve their impact. They dropped the link that they link to trust. Imagine what workers would think if Trump abolished CBR and then 1 year later what did a 180 for no reason. Workers obviously don't trust that, and the courts or Trump did that in good faith, which means that they won't try to negotiate because they don't trust that decision too. They dropped
drop that informal consultation solves conflict endpoints, which means suits aren't key. They drop temporito, which is departments are meeting with union reps, focus on relations, really reduce conflict, discuss earnings, and collaborate. Studies prove that improved dialogue markedly. 3. The Cabinet fields ironclad prohibitions on reassigning, coercing, defunding, dismissing federal workers for political reasons, which and establishes whistleblower protections. They also offers the quote legal and financial resources necessary for whistleblower retaliation, which solves the reasons why unions are key. Now, 4 is that if it's true that the Cabinet people can just make up political reasons to dismiss people, then obviously they can't solve, because agencies can always make up a quote political, a legal reason to dismiss someone on merit. The impact being later was answered about the scope of protections not narrow. The Cabinet feels the scientific integrity policy, the congressional oversight plank does solve, and impeachment does not cause escalation. They drop it is way more legitimate to impeach Trump because it does impeach Trump because he is causing constitutional breakdown. Now, the capacity DA. Extending the defense that they cannot solve anything. Unions cannot shape bargaining scope because employee rights are always subordinate to the agency's mission, budget, organization, and security. That's a handler evidence, which means they cannot solve anything like Trump launching a nuke because he's populist. Now, the second advantage, Trump will not create a foreign policy crisis. It's all propaganda. When it's recent empirics, when it's first, but evidence says Trump will leverage his personal relationships to make foreign policy look like a win. For example, he uses his friendship with Putin to de-escalate conflict with Russia, which is more politically beneficial than creating anarchy. 2. Term 1 proves 2 and C. Great evidence says Trump already had the option to undertake military interventions in the Middle East. Our evidence better contextualizes the difference between Trump's motives and his actions. The words that come out of his mouth are entirely divorced from what he ends up doing. He said he's going to build a wall, repeal time regulations, and he didn't. 3. No escalation. Even if Trump does something unpredictable, it won't draw in other countries because they know the threat is Trump being Trump and not real security threat. The 2 and C. And so evidence says that Trump won't respond if China attacks Taiwan or if Putin goes to ceasefire because Trump has already decided on his policy stance. I don't need to go to advantage 1 because all of the kind of stuff proves that we solve way better and there's a far larger risk that negotiations fail.
342, right? No, it was 342.
342.
340.
342.
Decline. Oh, sorry.
So I have speech docs from the neg that are not this debate. Cap K, different counter plan.
I think you have the wrong email chain open now.
Is the subject title called Dartmouth Round 2, Michigan VP?
Oh, well, I guess maybe you're right, it's different debate, I don't know.
I could reply all with your personal
Okay,
email.
fine. I don't think I have any of your speech docs from this round. So it'd be good if you could make a card doc and send it just to me and nobody else,
Okay.
because I don't think I've gotten anything. I've got all of theirs and none of yours. Okay,
Okay, I'll do that.
Okay, order is the expertise advantage, which is advantage 1.
yep,
The overreach advantage, which is 2.
yep,
Capacity, counter
What?
plan, the capacity
Yep.
DA, the counter plan, and then the deference DA.
got it.
Is everyone good? Economic decline outweighs on magnitude and speed, but caps the best version of the DA. Decline ignited global hotspots, sparks new hostilities, and creates a power vacuum for adversaries to fill in. Nuclear strikes as the rational response during downturn because leaders have an incentive to escalate and strike for resources of political gain. Our evidence name drops Ukraine, Israel, and Taiwan as specific avenues for escalation. This must outweigh in terms of the DA. Intelligence doesn't stop the outbreak of war and assumes rational actors that can use it. Decline circumvents those checks and incentivizes risky decision making. Remember, every part of this mechanically is dropped by the 2-hour, and you should not cross-apply defense for Dartmouth. The overreach advantage. Defense on this page does not assume a downturn, so it is non-responsive, but I'll cover my bases. An unchecked Trump discourages alliance management and incentivizes adversaries like China and Russia to become belligerent. Our evidence says it makes the globe lack a global referee and protector and derails all nuclear command control. Dartmouth's defense is at best says two things. One, he'll be nice to alliances, and two, he's isolationist. Neither are responsive to our scenario and paint a very optimistic picture with zero more. And personal relationships is about alliances, not adversaries, and appeals to incentivizes war. That's homework. Term 1 is disproven by Iran strikes in Venezuela, so he is interventions now. Yes, drawn. Other countries take it as an invite to escalate, or Trump is generally belligerent. Capacity. This was a disgrace. Norris said one line and dropped every 1-year warrant on the case and the DA. Durable fiat means that we get good faith enforcement, including the end point of the CBA, which would include bargaining for scientific integrity and refusing unlawful orders. Bargaining also creates electoral costs for agencies dropped, and they abide, which is the blamed evidence. And unions create stock gaps and lobby against deregulation, which does affect agencies' missions and drops civil services 90% of the federal government's operation, which solves the scenario that they're going for. The capacity or the counterplay. At the top, they dropped that impeachment would cause a nuclear war, and they didn't kick the impeachment play. Big mistake. We read a deal with 2 cards. Impeachment makes the U.S. look irreparably unstable with unpredictable regime change that breaks down deterrence by creating a window of vulnerabilities for global escalation by revisionist actors, including China, Russia, and Iran. That's Pasito and mean. Even if you think that the counterplan solves, it would independently cause a nuclear war. Dropped by the 2NR. Don't judge kick it for them because that's interventionist. They said no words on whether or not they're kicking this plank. But if you think the counterplan solves better, then permutation do both. Solves better can never be a net benefit because it would combine the counterplans and plans protections. Now, the counterplan's solvency is very low. Bargaining is key. 1, trust. Unions are perceived as a key guarantor of expertise protection because they're unique venues unconditionally on the side of workers. The counterplan is viewed as unenforced or rigged for Trump because bureaucratic, purely merit-based systems are empirically emblematic of favoritism by the executive, which is why they bargained for the plan in the first place. The impact of self-censorship. Experts in the administrative state care about getting policy right, but not more than they care about their livelihoods. They don't exist. They don't trust the counterplan. Then they'll be dissuaded from investing their own expertise and refuse to correct policy fears out of fear of retribution, causing a wide range of crises. That's Schulman and Moynihan. Censorship is empirically verified. The most burning question civil servants ask themselves when deciding the state is, do I have policy influence here, which only unions grant at the face of repressive employment tactics. Experts under the Trump administration were less likely to voice their views when they felt unwelcome, but the control that the unions grant over personal management granted credibility to the merit system. And the most prominent question civil servant, and that's all when you see Keller and Richardson evidence, frame sufficiency through the exponential nature of our expertise impact. They're correct that protections or just cause provisions could get close, but good isn't good enough given the increasing complexity of risk. Any one miswarming or silence expert produces outsized harm. A single act of self-censorship could be the make or break between whether the U.S. communicates with an adversary safely prevents us from stumbling into a conflict, which means that even if the difference seems marginal, you should over-prioritize the perceived benefit civil servants feel when unions compared to employment protections because the impact to any
difference is unquantifiable. That's Schulman and Moynihan. 2, productivity. The deficit was literally dropped. It's key to efficiency. Well-defined labor rights are key to check managerial abuse and challenge. Channel inevitable worker-employee conflict into productive avenues. Some worker-boss conflicts is inevitable bargaining. Keeps the disputes in formal channels, preventing it from spilling over into attrition with slowdowns. With the unions, workers and their bosses hammer out dispute resolution and arbitrary conflicts, and servants have some degree of confidence in production, so they know they have an external actor. Now, they say congressional oversight. It obviously links to the DA. It would require national security defense to uphold. Trump would sue against enhanced congressional authorization, which invokes the national security defense. Courts would have to uphold the counterclaim, triggering the link since they said mere cuts to the doctrine are sufficient, but it also can't solve because it's about national security, not economy, which we're going for. They say that we would also link to trust. Wrong. Our actor is the courts, not Trump flip-flopping, which is trustworthy and uphold. And they've also dropped our arguments that unions are trustworthy. They say that they would make up the political things against the plan. True. That's wrong. Because our argument is that unions are the one institutions and they can fight those allegations. Dartmouth might have thought that they were smart going for cyber attack. This is debate 101. You need internal link defense to go for an internal link turn. We have 2 internal links. 1, expertise. Civil servants with cyber expertise won't be able to control the damage Trump is doing. It opens up bureaucracy to a wide swath of cyber harm. That's core. 2, espionage. Dismissed workers will give information up to adversaries because of monetary incentive and grievance against the government. Walton is also a deficit to the counter plan because even some uncertainty means that they would leak cyber secrets, which means that they have zero inroads to our cyber internal link. But we have defense. We have defense to theirs. The internal link makes no sense. 1, classification has existed for centuries. The Supreme Court would never overturn classification. They've had countless opportunities to overturn it, but deference to national security has remained high, so it's unlikely the act would be the one that causes would spill over. The courts knows how detrimental it would be, and small cuts to low levels of classification would it be the make or break for human extinction. They said this is new. Wrong. We said intelligence is resilient. The one error extended the card that we read to all causes. Intelligence capacity is created from politicization, cognitive bias, weak communication, and bureaucratic obstacles. That's there. One sees cess for impact evidence. We have comparative evidence. Politicization is the quote biggest challenge facing intelligence, and only the app has a chance of solving it. Weak leadership who grades effective analysis of intelligence, causing experts overrate or underrate the veracity of intelligence, ingraining structural bias intelligence action networks proven by Trumpian manipulation of intelligence about Ukraine and Hunter Biden. Only the app can solve it. Insulating intelligence workers from backlash is far more likely to combat structural bias and politicization in intelligence agencies. That's Handler 3. Lastly, the link is Trump. They've set the bar as merely, quote, questioning the doctrine being sufficient. We have evidence that they've questioned the doctrine of the national security defense in a variety of cases. The Supreme Court won't use the plan as justification to the national security deference because they've had dozens of opportunities to do so, like Morrison, Humphreys, and Weiner. Those cases overwhelmed since the cross-cutting signal may remain stare decisis would convince them to uphold national security deference in the case of intelligence. That's Sherminsky. We're making a card document.